Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today. So the subject of our today's webinar is dive into CO2 and cost estimate features in advanced design. My name is Farshad Purshak. I am the Senior Solution Technical Manager at Graitec for US and Canada. Let's go on with some of our slides here. I'm going to give you some introduction, and after that we can jump into advanced design to basically show you these very important features in advanced design. So our agenda today will be, first we will have a general overview, then we will talk about the CO2 emissions estimations in Graitec Advanced Design. We will talk about data processing, how you can input your data. Then we will see how advanced design basically will perform these kind of calculations, and we will check the results. And then we will jump into cost estimate features in advanced design, very similar to the CO2 emissions. We will see how we can input our data and see the results. Finally, we will have a demonstration inside advanced design to see how you can use these features in your projects. So as a general overview, why we need to have these CO2 emissions estimates in our projects. So there are a couple of very important reasons. The first one is basically we want our carbon footprint assessments for all of our projects, so we can have an estimate of how much this is going to affect basically the environment, and based on our design and the elements that we are using, how much is going to be the CO2 equivalent emissions in our design structure. The next option is optimization of material usage and construction methods. Well, basically, if we can get an overview of the CO2 emissions estimate for our design, we can optimize them and try to maybe have less emissions and maybe less environmental impact. And finally, as you may know, there are some compliance rules is coming from different companies or government soon. Some are already established to basically limit the carbon emissions or control them. We have several environmental standards and sustainability goals that we can reach out through these basically estimates, and if we are able to basically measure the CO2 emissions of our projects. So very similarly about the cost estimates, this has been there for a long time. Obviously, for every project, you need to have a control on the cost and check the profitability of your project. You can optimize your project for the costs if you have an idea of the cost of the project and how much basically it's gonna affect your design. And as well, you can have increased stakeholder transparency when you have an idea of this information, especially on the cost. So overall, using these features, we are trying to have more impact on our economic, environmental, and also the social impact of the project that we are designing. We are working on that. So the carbon estimates can have different levels. So I have put a simple kind of screenshot here. So as you see, the carbon estimate can be in different phases of a project. So it can be in product phase. The estimate can be done for construction, maintenance and use, end of life, and even beyond the life cycle. So these emissions, they don't just happen at the start when we are planning. So they are going to be basically continually throughout the life cycle of our structure in this scenario. So the tools that we have in advanced design, basically we are in product section when we are designing a structure. So we will basically are covering the A1, A2, and A3 categories. So obviously there are other, as I mentioned, categories. As you see here for A4 and A5, it's going to be like the construction ages, the embodied carbon there. Obviously, a large part can be in maintaining and using your structure or your building. And you see here in this screenshot, we have different categories also for that one, for the maintenance and usage. Finally, the end of life cycle, there's also another type of emissions, embodied carbon emissions. And finally, if you can reuse or recovery, that's also another story, which is going to basically affect the whole life cycle of our structure. So as I mentioned earlier, in this webinar, we are focusing on the product stage, and advanced design will provide you with A1, A2, and A3 emissions estimates. So let's jump into some screenshots or some slides to see how basically we can use advanced design to achieve this goal. So first of all, in advanced design, we have a very simplified data entry dialog boxes for CO2 emissions. So as you see here in this a left screenshot, simply you go to manage in advanced design, and here we have carbon factors. So this is basically a window or a tool to define your carbon factors for every element that you are planning to use basically in your structure. So as you see here in this example, I have defined like some concrete plumb reinforcement, and as well steel. Then you can input the values. We have a library. If you click on these carbon factors, advanced design can connect to a standard library, which is a third-party library and it can get some of these values for you. So this is going to be different for every country localization. So which every government can have different factors for these materials. But here we are just using these values as examples. Now, as you see, advanced design lets you to define your carbon emissions based on 3 or 4 categories that you see here. So you can define based on the unit weight, you can define based on the emissions, based on the unit volume, unit area. So these are like the values that you can define. And in the results part, you will see when we are getting the results, you can get your results also based on these main 3 categories. Also, there's an interesting option here. You can have only concrete, or you can even add reinforcement emissions inside your concrete. So basically for reinforced concrete, you can have different values. This is logical because maybe concrete material can emit other values of CO2 than the reinforcement. But here in advanced design, we have the option to define those separately. And at the end, advanced design will give you basically the emissions for combined element. There's also another option here. You can also create your own library in advanced design. So you can define your material. It can be customized material. You can input your values here, and you can always use them into all of your other projects. So basically, you don't need to define these values for every project. You can just define them one. It's going to be saved in advanced design library, and later on in other projects, you can just assign them to your project. And also here, as you see, this is a way to assign those to our standard concrete or steel material, or steel or concrete material or steel material. So as you see here, when you're defining the material, you can basically assign the type of the carbon emissions that we are going to assign to this type of material, which is basically structurally used in my structure. So here we have some screenshots of our results. So we have graphical results in advanced design, which are very informative. You can get screenshots and etc. For better visualization. And also we have very detailed reports. So as an example here in this structure, you can see a color code and color map. So I can clearly see which elements in my structure have higher CO2 emissions. And this screenshot that you see here. It's based on the elements, so this element by element, linear elements actually. And here on the right side, I can basically have the same results for my planar elements, let's say for the roofs or walls or etc. I can see in a very detailed manner how my roofs are basically affecting the emissions and how much CO2 equivalent they can emit in my design. Similarly here at the bottom, we have our very detailed report. So the left one that you see here are the definitions that we went through in the past slide, and the one here are the results based on every material which is used in my structure. And we can see, as you see, per weight of that element, per volume, and per area if you want to have them. And here you can also see the total values that Advanced Design is estimated basically for this project in a report format. So let's also talk about the cost estimate features in Advanced Design. So again, it's very similar to CO2. So to activate this feature in Advanced Design, now we have, you can click in the material, in the Manage tab, and material definition. Here you can define your costs. So in this example, again, we are using concrete, steel, and timber. Similar to CO2 emissions, you can define your cost either based on the weight of material, volume, or area. And similar to CO2 emissions, you can also have a library of those and save it in your projects. Here in material assigning to my project, we first select the standard material, which we use for our structural design, and we simply clicking cost data, we can assign this cost to our material. So either concrete, even timber, and steel. And here, as you see, these are the results now for my cost basically for this structure. And as you see, we can visualize them and we can have very detailed reports here. Here we have even more detailed reports. So as you see, we can have the reports based on the usage of the material. And as well here we have in Advanced Design, you can also individualize each type of the element. So you can check your columns, your beams for foundations, how much are going to be cost for each of those elements. So this is also in a report format. And finally, you can also have them categorized in linear, planar, and foundations. And Advanced Design will be able to give you a total estimate of cost of this project. So now we talked on these features. We had introduction on these features. We can jump into Advanced Design to basically see how these features can work. Okay, I have opened Advanced Design. So as you see, this is the first page of our software. Generally speaking, Advanced Design is 3D finite element structure analysis and design software. So it can basically analyze and design steel, concrete, timber, and cold form steel sections as well. You can analyze and design it based on different country codes. For example, if I want to show you what country codes we cover for structural design, I can click on configuration. And as you see for Canada, we have all of the most recent codes. So combinations, seismic, climatic, we have reinforcement, concrete, reinforced concrete design, steel, timber, and we also have masonry design, which is currently based on Eurocodes, but hopefully we will have it soon for North American codes. So this is for Canada, and if I switch my localization to US, you will see that we also cover the US codes for structural design. So this interface is very simple. So basically, if you want to create a new project, you can click on New. To open the older projects, you can open them. Advanced Design is fully interoperable with other software. For example, you can synchronize your models, import and export them from either Revit or Advanced Steel. We have a very smooth synchronization between those software and Advanced Design. Here you see a list of my previous projects. If you're new to Advanced Design, I would suggest to check some of our sample examples. As you see here, we have different types of models already created. You can just click them, open them. You can study how the modeling works in Advanced Design. You can check the results and etc. using our sample projects here. As well, here we have a learning part. If I click on Learn, this is going to bring you to our basically knowledge base and tutorials. So we have tutorials to get you started on Advanced Design. So we have first project for steel structures, for concrete structures. We have documentation and also knowledge base with lots of blogs and etc. to basically get you started with Advanced Design. So for the purpose of this webinar, I have already created an example structure for you. So I will just open it here, just clicking on that. There you go. So an overview of the interface for Advanced Design. It's very simple. So for example, here on the top part, we have all of our modeling tools, analysis tools, modification tools, etc. On the left side, we have project browser. So this is very useful. You can control basically every element in your structure. If I open, let's say, this model here, you will see that this model has been categorized by levels. So I can even go on and see that everything is organized as you see there. I can see my columns beams for first level. This is gonna basically help you first of all to select specific parts of structures much more easier, and also more control on visualization. So for example, you can isolate some parts of structure, you can hide them, you can display them, you can see the results on specific parts of the structure using this project pilot or project browser that we have in Advanced Design, and it covers everything here. So you can see your geometry categorized, you can have your loads, load combinations, analysis types, etc., etc. Here on the right side, we have properties of every element. So for example, if I select one of these beams here, you will see that its properties will be automatically shown here. And you have here control on defining your material, defining the section, and let's say releases, and every other basically parameters that you need either for the structural analysis, and also here at the bottom you have the parameters for code check and design. Like let's say for steel structures, we can have lateral torsional buckling lengths, lateral supports, classes of sections, etc., etc. And finally, here at the bottom, we have our command line. So you are able to also use this command line to put some input as a text. Advanced Design can accept also those kind of inputs. And also, if you have any kind of warning or errors, all of those will be displayed here in our command line. So to get into CO2 and cost estimates of this structure, we can just run the analysis. So I can go to analysis, and here we can open an already done analysis, or you can create a new one. And if you want to create a new one, that's okay. Just to let you know, in Advanced Design, we can do the analysis and design in separate phases. So for example, if you want to just see the FE calculations, I can put the check mark here, and you will see only FE calculation, the design will not be done. Or if you want to have the RC calculation and still, you can just put the check marks there, and it's going to also perform all of those checks for us for structural design. So in this scenario, we are only interested in carbon and emissions calculates, so we don't need to do structural design. I will keep it as is, or I can just simply go and open my analysis that I have done previously. So to keep it simple, I will just use the open option and click OK. So there you go. I have opened my analysis. So first of all, what you see here is the automatic mesh that Advanced Design will perform on every structure. And if we want to get our first CO2 emissions results, you can go to cost and CO2 emissions. Obviously, if you want to see structural or finite element results, we have them here. So you can check displacement, forces, stresses, etc. for linear, planar elements, etc. So since this is not the subject of our webinar here, I will directly jump into our cost and CO2 estimates. So here I can use my dropdown. As you see here, we have cost and CO2. For example, we can start with CO2 emissions. You can assign or check the results for all of those categories. For example, let's go with linear supports. And here also, I'm going to ask the software to provide me the CO2 emissions of our element. So basically, based on each element, we can click here. So after clicking on this results explorer, as you see here, I can see my linear elements. If you want to basically hide the mesh, I can do that. You can just right click and hide the mesh. It's going to be more clear. And here, as you see, I can see the CO2 equivalent per kilogram based on my linear elements, and CO2 emissions are for element base. So for each element I can see my color codes. So definitely we can change it. For example, if you want to see per lengths, you can click there. And as you see, this is going to be based on lengths. I can hide the mesh, and this is going to be per meter of every element. And finally, I'm going to show you the volume. And finally here, as I mentioned in my slides, you can also get per weight of CO2 emissions. So this is also our results based on our weight of the material used. So we can see clearly like some parts of structures that they are using some specific material. We have less carbon emissions compared to the top parts of our structure. So this was basically for our CO2 emissions. And similarly for the cost, I can just drop this menu down. I can click on cost. And as you see here, basically it's gonna show you now the cost of linear elements based on each element. As you see here, you see the color code as well. So similarly, I can switch to planar elements. And if we just hide our mesh, now we can see the cost estimate based on our roofs or planar estimates based on Canadian dollars that we have defined. And if you want to, by the way, change the currency, you can always go to units that we have in Advanced Design. And here at the bottom, we have the currency that you can change it. And finally, what we can have here is also, let's say you're talking about planar elements, but I want the cost, let's say, based on the weight of the material which is used. Click there and here. So in this case, because all of our floors are using the same material, that's why we can see the similar values for every roof. So and also we can have this for volume as well of my walls and etc. They have different volumes, and probably that's why we are seeing some different values as you see there. So this was about how you can get your graphical results. So similarly, I can also show you how to obtain the tables or reports. So simply we can go to and click on generate a new report. You can just click there. It's going to bring up our report generator in Advanced Design, which is fully customizable. So here, basically, we can go to tables and in geometrical data. And here, as you see in the list, I have the cost estimation and CO2 emissions. So to just make the report a bit shorter, I will just remove this since we just want to see our tables. And then I can add my cost estimation and CO2 emissions estimations. As you see, you can even go more granular, like you can just select some specific material or for element type or by system, etc. But in this case, we can just move the whole category of cost estimate and CO2 estimates here. And now if I click on generate, it's going to generate the full reports. Let's do that. And there you go. So the full report has been created. And as you see here, we have all of the tables that we required for both CO2 emissions and also for our cost estimates, as you see here. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also have them based on the levels and based on every element, as you see here, because if you remember, I have already defined my structure using my project browser. So since it's already organized, I can see everything as you see there. So, and same thing here on the right side. As you see, we have the total, we have per material, and as well per every structural element that we have used in this project. Okay, so let's go back to our slides then. Okay, so this was what we wanted to show you in this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention. And we can now jump into our questions and answer part. By the way, we are always happy to send you free trial of Advanced Design. You can just send us an email in these emails, as you see, support.canada@graitec.com or support.us@graitec.com. So let's jump into questions and answers. And if there are any questions, you can use the chat tool of the platform, and we will be answering them. Thanks again for your time.